Welcome to today's episode of Expert Showcase. Today on the show we have Jim Kellner, and he's going to be talking to you, teaching you, and showing you all about creating the future with the power of your mind. Hey Jim, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing good. Sorry.
That's
write down some notes.
I was going to say, we like to surprise our guest every now and then, and I don't know, put them on camera.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Jim, I am so looking forward to today's episode. I was on your show before and I had an epic experience, and you're an epic guy, and I love everything we're going to be talking about today. And you know, creating the future and using the power of your mind is so important to people today, because it's one of the few things in this crazy world that, whether people know it or not, they can actually control. So before we get into all of that, we always like to start off with an abbreviated version of a hero's journey. And for our purposes, the hero's journey is the beginning, the turning point, and the aftermath. The beginning, where you were before you were the success you are today. The turning point, what led you to that. You know, what was that? You know, maybe it was some deep, dark thing, some nasty turn of events, or maybe it was something positive. Maybe it was just somebody making an impact in your life. And then the aftermath, we talk a little bit about your learnings so far, being the success you are today. So before we get into each one of those, give us a quick overview, minute or two, on your hero's journey.
Well, you know, I tried a lot of stuff when I was younger. I mean, I've always been sort of into self-help stuff, reading about it, never actually doing it, and that was one of the problems. I was kind of floundering for a long time, and I learned about hypnosis. I mean, ever since I can remember, but I never really used it. I ended up about 5 years ago. I was in a really just bad place. I was close to 300 pounds. I literally never exercised. I ate like, man, I never ate fruits and vegetables unless they were fried or baked in a pie. Boom. and I don't know what happened. It was just, you know, I always wanted to meditate too, and I never really got to it. Finally, I just started taking some small steps, listening to hypnosis. And really, it just sort of, the time just flew by, and all of a sudden, a year later, I was down, you know, 50 pounds. Another year, I was down another 25, and then eventually lost about 75 pounds. And decided I could help other people, so I started doing hypnotherapy.
Oh, that is epic! Yeah, there's so many epic nuggets within there that I'm sure we're gonna get into, and you and I can definitely, definitely have something we can commiserate and relate on. I too was, you know, overweight, you know, most of my life, and you know, I remember the day I got to 300 pounds, and you know, when I saw, it's funny, I weighed myself on one of those doctor's scales, and I don't know if you went through the same thing, but you know, when I actually had to take the big black bar and went from like the 200 to the 250, and you put the little one, it goes across, and you realize that you got to go to that next one. It's like, man, this is just, something has got to change. So anyway, but that's the excuse me. So folks, we're going to do a different over-under today. I've got a terrible cough. Normally we do an over-under on how many mistakes I make, or how many times I mispronounce somebody's name. Today it's going to be coughs, and I'm going to go with 4. So if you bet the under, you know, if I cough 3 or less times, you win. You know, 4 is a push, and if you go, you know, if you bet 5 or over, you know, it's, you know, if you bet the over, I've got to cough at least 5 times. So whatever you bet amongst yourselves is great. I don't care. You know, it's your call, but we'll see how I get through this today. There's number 2. I think I'd bet the over. I'd bet the over if I were you, because that's number 2 already. Anyway, Jim,
we've been hanging out for about 10 minutes already, so I kind of have some.
Yeah, exactly. Jim's got the inside information. So, Oh, anyway, so Jim, let's dig into the beginning. Let's go back to that time, before the turning point. You were talking about you were overweight. You were talking about your eating habits. You were talking about a lot of stuff that you were doing. You were also talking about the fact that you'd read a lot of self-help books, and it's interesting that you brought up that you read a lot but didn't implement. And a lot of times we like to call that shelf help. It's kind of you get the self-help books,
Yeah.
put them on the shelf, and of course they're going to magically help you. So either point you want to talk about, let's dig a little bit into either, maybe what led you. Was there any key thing that led you to being overweight and what you learned from that, or from the self-help industry? Was there any key thing that led you to want to read a lot but then not implement?
I'm sort of addicted to information. I think was part of the problem. Even like right now, I've got 300 videos saved on Facebook to watch. They keep popping up, reminding me. I'm like, that's right. um, and I kind of always been that way. So I like to. I love getting information. I actually about a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to stop buying books because I don't read them most of the time anyway. So just not going to just keep hassling with that. And I have to make it something. If I do get one now, it's got to be something I'm really really fired up about. And even now, I've got like 2 or 3 books that I'm reading right now that I'm kind of going back and forth on them and stuff. It's not really my best way of taking in information. I think it's probably part of the problem.
Yeah.
And so, what's that?
No, I was just going to ask you, do you think that part of what it could have been was or is the fact that's number 3? I need a little counter, like the little hands on Blab. I need a little, dink. Um,
Right.
do you think maybe it's because that the self-help industry, our industry, has for years told people they need to read books and they need to do this, and has really put this stress, the fact that if you're not reading and you're not learning, then you're not growing, and that it's such a thing that it's always pushed, to read more. In other words, even John Maxwell talks about the fact that he knows people with big TVs and big libraries, and there's kind of this thing where it's the people with big libraries are smart, and they earn more, and the people with big TVs just sit in front of them and veg and that sort of thing. But do you think that had anything to do with it? The fact of this general notion that you have to read more and you have to read, and I'm using that word specifically because we'll talk about why in a second. But do you think that had anything to do with it?
Absolutely. And we're constantly told that anyway. I mean, you hear like I don't know. I think I remember reading somewhere that Bill Clinton reads a book a week or something, maybe 2 books a week or something. They talk about all these successful people and how they read so much, and so you go, well, if I want to be successful, I've got to read a lot. Um, yeah, I mean, and everybody writes. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I wrote a book, so because you have this information and you want to get it out to people. And I think sometimes that's just I mean, maybe it's the old standby of the way to get the information out to people. But yeah, I mean, that's like I said. I mean, we always hear that successful people read a lot, and I would love to have. I want to have somebody that's highly successful tell me they've never read a book. That's what I want to hear.
Well,
I don't know if that's a great thing, but
yeah, well, and see, here's the interesting thing, and I use the word read specifically because you and I grew up in a time where libraries were a thing. I still remember going to my library after school, and it was, reading, you wanted to, whether your teachers or or the successful people, you were pushed to read. And that's because a lot of books didn't come in any other form except printed material. So the challenge becomes for people who take in information differently, and this is one of the golden nuggets that I wanted to pull out of the beginning phase, is the challenge that comes for people who take in information differently is sometimes people will feel bad about not reading, and they don't they don't think of all the audiobooks they listen to. Like I used to talk about not reading a book in like 20 years, and then I realized, I've got 100 audiobooks that I listen to, but it's kind of, it's where you go, okay, yes, I technically I consumed that book. And that's one of the things I wanted people to really pull out of this section was, both Jim and I and a lot of people who watch Expert Showcase, view and consume information in a different way. So if you're out listening, would you agree with this, Jim? If they're out listening to audiobooks or watching videos, it's just as good as consuming and reading, physically reading the book?
Well, it's funny you mentioned it, because as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, yeah, well, I mean, I'm listening to audiobooks all the time, right? So, I'm listening to Think and Grow Rich on my phone, in fact. You can download and listen to it on your phone. And I've tried to read the book a bunch of times, and I get stuck somewhere, and I just put it down and never go back to it. And so I got the audiobook now. And so, yeah, I think, when I was teaching also, we always try to find different ways of presenting the information, because not everybody's going to get the information, take it in that easily that way. So the more you can mix it up, and the other thing too is, from a learning standpoint, if you can consume it in multiple different ways, you're going to retain the knowledge more as well.
Yeah, definitely. So then, one of the things that it sounds like one of the things that got you from having just shelf help to actually getting into and understanding and starting to learn more about, the industry and things you could do, is switching the way you consume things from trying to force yourself to read something to, to listening and watching videos and everything. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, at least you did a lot better than I did. I remember I never liked reading books in high school, so I would just try and read the minimum amount of pages possible to pass the test, and it served me very, very well until one time. And I think I failed one test in high school, which was kind of ironic because I was in the top 1% of my class and all the other stuff. So the teacher's looking like, "Did you actually really take this test?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just never read the book." But so give me something I can watch, or give me something I can listen to. But that's besides the point. So you've got, so do you think, let me ask you this question. Do you think that if you would have switched from trying to consume the self-help books in written format to a different format sooner, do you think it would have helped your life? Do you think it would have helped you get thin? Do you think it would have changed your life in any way if you would have done it sooner than you did?
Possibly. There was also still, and I still don't know the answer to this one, but there was still a lot of that. Well, I'll tell you one thing that I will say helps. Just reading, just getting that knowledge in. I caught it from Chris. Excuse me. Is mindset, things like that. Looking at different viewpoints. But a lot of the things that can be really helpful are actually taking the action. And boy, I got to tell you, I still don't know if I would have taken action like you got to do. I mean, you can't, for a lot of those things, you can't. It's like you can't learn to play guitar by reading a book.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So regardless of how you consume so I think, and I'm going to wrap up the beginning by saying this. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like the biggest learning you got out of the beginning phase of your life, before it got to the turning point, before it got, bad and that sort of thing, was that if you could look back now, the biggest learning would be take action. Just don't consume the information, but take action on what you're seeing, reading, and hearing. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think so many of us, I still find myself doing this sometimes, is, we spend so much time. Let me just give you a quick example. So I need to make sales calls for my business, because I also do comedy hypnosis. And so I have to call venues up and solicit them to do my shows, for me to do my shows there. And so I kept looking at videos online. Grant Cardone, he's awesome, and I think there's a lot of good information there. And I'd read stuff on the internet about how to do it. And I feel like I just had to, if I just knew this one little secret, whereas really the real key secret is make 1,000 phone calls and make 100 phone calls, because that information is great, and to a certain extent, I think it's great to get the information in, but you just got to get out there and do it at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people fall into that same trap of, just feeling that the next book they read, the next piece of information they have, the next that's going to open up the world. And what they don't realize is that next piece of information may never come. And if it does, it'll come a lot quicker through the trial and error. And we can do a whole, we could do a whole show on. Well, I think we could do a whole show on a whole, multiple hours on that. So let's dive into the next topic and the next area, which is the turning point. So what happened, or what, was it a deep dark place you got to? Was it being really upset with your weight or with your situation, or was it something else? What got you? What got you to that turning point?
Well, I'll tell you, I suffered with depression throughout my life, and even I think as a child, I just didn't know what to call it. It wasn't until I found out what it was that I said, "Wow, I think I've been dealing with this my whole life." And I tried taking various medications and things, and then the side effects or it wouldn't work and those kind of things, so I wouldn't use them. And so I got to this point where I was living in an attic apartment in Seattle. I was extremely depressed, about 300 pounds, and really, I mean, I just ate horribly. I mean, it was just awful. I was unemployed. I was all those things, watching TV constantly, and not moving. And I remember walking. I mean, I was only 40 years old at the time, and I was, walking across the living room to get to the refrigerator. Was painful. I mean, my feet would hurt and my body would hurt, and I had this kind of a shuffling gait the way I was walking. And I was like, this is not good. And I was just miserable. I really was. I was just miserable. I was doing stand-up comedy at the time. And it was funny because I think that I'm really my best jokes come when I'm miserable, unfortunately.
So yeah, Jim, you're so right, and it's such a shame that that comedians all over the world talk about the fact that their best jokes and their best times come from when they're miserable. In fact, did you ever see the movie Misery Loves Comedy? It's like an hour and a half thing with a bunch of very famous comics talking about how they how the things that they went through. Did you ever see that movie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
So
I can relate to a lot of it. Yeah.
yeah, and it's such a shame. And it's probably, part of the reason, it's probably part of the reason why a lot of our great comics have died. Well, it is part of the reason why a lot of our great comics have died
Yeah.
so young, because, it's just, it's kind of sad. And it's I guess, to put a more positive spin on it, you used it as fuel. You used the depression and everything in the situation you were in as fuel for one type of fire, which was your comedy, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Problem is when I'm really depressed, that's when I feel the most creative. That's when I feel like I could be a great writer or a comic or whatever. But it's when I'm the laziest too. I mean, I have no energy. I don't want to do anything except watch TV, watch movies.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's interesting. We just talked about fuel because that's really what the turning point's all about. It's what's going to fuel the next generation, the next iteration of your life. So initially, you were using all of what you were going through to fuel a comedic career. I
Yeah.
think I think you were saying that the real change came when you started to really take I'll call it an honest look at yourself and go, I just don't like what I'm seeing. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. So I absolutely was really just. I mean, miserable is just the only word that comes to mind. Just miserable. I hated my life. Um, and I had no direction, and it seemed just insurmountable. When you're 300 pounds, if you got to lose 10 pounds, you can, skip a few meals and go for an extra walk or something. When you're 300 pounds, that's going to be a bit of a journey, unless you're doing some kind of something drastic. You're looking at a reasonable rate, maybe 10 pounds a month. 5-10 pounds a month is pretty reasonable. That's a long journey, and one of the problems too, and this happens in all kinds of roles, is I thought I couldn't be happy until I lost the weight. Then realized that every little milestone, every 10 pounds, every 20 pounds, people go, wow, you're losing weight. Your pants fit again. You feel awesome.
Yeah, well, I've been there. It's I remember, when the first time I lost 100 pounds, I remember that, yeah, I remember that in the end, it wasn't all I thought it was going to be cracked up to be, because I was still a little bit overweight and that sort of thing, and I wasn't mentally prepared for the end. But I remember, the joy I felt each time I had to go to the store and buy something, and buy a new, a new pair of pants or something, because the old ones were falling off. Or I'll never forget, I lost as I was losing the weight. I gotta tell this funny story. I'm laughing because where I was working, one of the secretaries came up to me, and she was in her 50s or 60s, and she said to me, she goes, "Chris, can you buy some new pants?" And because I lost weight, and I said, "Why?" She goes, "Well, we might be old, but we still want to look at your nice ass all day." And I'm like, that. I'm like, now there's a compliment that will drive you to get. Yeah, exactly. That will drive you to continue to lose weight and continue to be on your journey. And I think that's the key. When people, I think,
Now, wait.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. I thought you were done. I just want. You've lost it more than once. You've lost 100 pounds.
Yeah, well, I went from 300 to 200. I wasn't prepared to understand what I would look like. I went back up to 278. I was going to get gastric bypass surgery, but because my then girlfriend, now ex-wife, was afraid of me dying on the operating table, decided not to have it. Lost about 30-ish pounds just, through a couple changes in eating. And then a few years ago, I was about 240, and decided to try Take Shape for Life for a month. And when I lost a massive amount of weight, I just kept going, and I eventually got all the way down to about a buck and a half. And I was definitely too skinny at that point. But now I live life in a healthy weight range, and I'm a lot happier, and a lot of things have changed. So yeah, I mean, I've gone through it. I've gone through it a couple times, in fact. And even though this is about you, not me, the first time I tried to lose weight, when I was about 10 years old, there's a video of me talking about it on YouTube, but I was 10 pounds overweight and couldn't play football. Now, I know it sounds amazing when you think about what they do with kids today, but back then you had to weigh a certain amount to play. They wouldn't move you up a level and put you in with bigger kids. So I had to lose 10 pounds. And yeah, my first experience with weight loss was having to go from 100 to 90 pounds back when I was about 10 years old. So
Wow.
yeah, so let's get back to you. So in the turning
Yeah.
point, the thing I want to bring this back to and really get our audience to realize is the fact that, not only did you start taking a look at yourself, but I think it sounds to me like a change and a light switch went off in your head that said, look, even though this is going to be a long journey, I have to be happy for the intermediate milestones. I mean, did that come into was that something that came into your mind then, or is that something you look back now and say you wish you would have known then?
Yeah. I don't think that I recognized it. That I could be happy along the journey. There was still this idea that, and it seems ridiculous looking back on it, but yeah, I mean, really, I've got to get an ideal weight before I can be happy, be satisfied, feel good about myself, whatever.
Yeah, and so I think that's the thing that I think from the turning point, that's the thing I want our audience to take away, is that you know you might don't look at it as this long when you're in that deep depths of despair. Don't look at it as this huge long journey you have to go on. Just look at it as taking one step at a time. Put one foot in front of the other, put your other foot down. I was going to start singing a song, but I won't. But that becomes the biggest thing to allow you to move from the turning point that you're into the next phase, which as we talk about here is the aftermath. So when you started, let's go back to kind of, you're starting to lose weight. What steps did you take at that point to start to lose weight, and then also to start to change what you were doing from being a comedian to going into hypnosis?
Well, so it's funny because you talk about going to the doctor scale. So of course, when you're close to 300 pounds, they want to see you pretty often. We'll
Yeah.
see you tomorrow, basically. Um, they want to stay because they're always, they're trying to motivate you in some way. And I remember the nurse, her name was Timmy, and I kept meaning to send her a thank you note, and I never have. Because here's the thing, she every single time that I went, she would say, "Well, have you been doing exercise?" And I go, "No, but I'm going to this time," And she would go, "Well, have you thought about maybe just doing like a 5-minute walk?" And then I do the same thing that like all my clients do and go, 5 minutes, that's not going to do anything. And finally, it was a combination of two different books, I think, that helped to kind of kick me over the edge too. Reading Ben Franklin's biography or autobiography, and he's got this system. Really, you say it wasn't perfect by any means, but he he decided from an early age that he wanted to become more perfect and and develop some really good habits. And he created himself a chart and he kept track of it. Whenever when he was, if he lied, for instance, or if he overindulged, he would note that. And then also there's a book called The Greatest Secret in the World by, I can't remember his name right now, very famous guy. Anyway, in this book, it's really about just the momentum, tracking what you do and doing it a little bit at a time. And I said, well, I'm going to try that. So I made myself this chart, and I said, I'm going to do 3 things. I'm going to meditate every day, at least for a minute. I'm going to exercise for 5 minutes, and I'm going to eat at least 1 fruit or vegetable every day, which is crazy. And so I just started that, and it just sort of started happening. I got to tell you, that first 50 pounds, it was so easy. I didn't even realize how easy it was. It was just all of a sudden I was just thinner. Unfortunately, the rest became difficult. I'm not one of these people that, unfortunately, that it comes off easily. I have to work at it. In fact, if I'm not diligent, in fact, I haven't been diligent lately, and I'm putting some back on. But I've got to really be strict with myself for it to get really where I want to be. But that first 50, man, it was just easy. It just came right up.
Yeah, it's amazing. By the way, was it Og Mandino that you were thinking of?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's such a common name that
Yes, exactly.
hey, I didn't know it either. I just went and Googled it real quick, but it's such
did you?
Yeah,
Oh,
but it's such a common name that it's easy to forget. Yeah. Og Mandino, yeah, because we both know so many people named Og.
Right, exactly.
I'm going to change my name to Og. It's just, better than Og. But anyway, no, and all that, like I said, Jim, I didn't know it either, so I went out and Googled it real quick. But hey, we need the SEO here. So, but anyway, so yeah, that is the amazing thing that a lot of people don't realize is that sometimes taking those small steps, sometimes taking that first step, just getting started,
Yes.
is the most important thing, and B ends up becoming, things just start to snowball. I know I went through the same thing when I lost my weight. It came off so easy that it's like, okay, let's go ahead and keep this rocking and rolling. But then you hit the plateau. And whether you're talking about weight loss or talking about other change in your life, I think everybody hits these plateaus as they go through changes. So when you hit your plateau in weight loss, did you add things to your routine? Did you do anything different to try and stimulate or try and push it further? Or what did you do?
I did. Yeah, I went very strict paleo. For people that don't know what paleo is, that's basically where you eat a lot of bacon and try to convince people it's healthy. But it's a new joke I'm working on. I hope that works out. So yeah, I had to be really strict, and so that was basically meat, fat, and vegetables was for quite a while. And the thing is it became easier. It became it's kind of funny now because I do get the cravings for donuts and things like that right now for some reason. But for a while, I just didn't care about that stuff. I remember, well, here's a funny one. When I was for a long time, I remember I ate ice cream pretty much every day. And I remember one of the things that kept me from trying to lose weight was I thought I could never not eat ice cream every day. And honestly, I haven't had ice cream since I can't remember. I don't remember the last time I had ice cream. It's not that big a deal to me. but at first I didn't give it up. That was the thing too. Is I didn't give up ice cream. It just sort of went away. But yeah, I bumped it up, man. I was exercising every single day. I was seeing clients at the time, and I was doing push-ups between clients. I was doing some Tai Chi exercises between clients. I mean, just running at lunchtime, even doing Zumba at night. I mean, I was just nuts about it. I'm kind of getting excited. I kind of want to do that again. It was fun. People think that it's, oh my God, you're spending so much time doing that and all this, which I thought at the time and before that too. But it was fun. I was having a great time with it.
And that ends up becoming the key. It is whether it's weight loss or whether it's other changes. And that's really the golden nugget. That is the golden nugget that I want our viewers to take away from this aftermath time is the fact that as you go through things, do things a little bit at a time, you enjoy them and they give you more energy and things just start to snowball. I mean, one of the things I take my clients through is I say, I guarantee I can give anybody in this world, everybody in this world, an hour back every week. I guarantee it. And they go, well, how the heck can you do that? I say, you wake up 5 minutes early and go to bed 5 minutes later. And they're shocked, and it's like, yeah, when you think about it, that's 10 minutes a day, that's 70 minutes a week. You now have an
Yeah.
extra hour every week to do something with. There's not a person, unless you are up 24 hours a day, there is not a person in this world that can't implement that specific technique and actually get an extra hour to do something with, during any given day. So this has been great. I've given what I believe are a lot of golden nuggets. Before we wrap up the hero's journey and head into and take a quick break and then head into creating the future with the power of your mind, is there any golden nugget or any learning from your hero's journey that you want to leave our audience with today?
Well, it's the big one, and I have to remind myself all the time because even now, because I've gotten out of the habit of doing as much as I used to do, and so now it's more I'm back to that place. Well, I used to do all this and everything, but you get busy with things, and sometimes things fall off. But just reminding myself and everybody else, I tell you what, that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes that you can gain right there, it can really make a difference. And I know it doesn't seem like it. And I'll tell you, a 5 minute walk isn't going to burn enough calories to do anything. I promise. I know that. I'm not stupid. Scientifically, it's not doing that much. But really, for your mental health, it will. And because 5 minutes becomes 6 minutes, becomes 7 minutes, becomes 10 minutes. And the other thing too is I want to remind people that we're sort of relating this to weight loss, but you mentioned John Maxwell before, and maybe when you're at that kind of level, you're having a great time, but you can have a great time along the way too. When you get that first paid speech, that first paid speaking engagement, that's awesome. When you get your first fan mail or something, all those things are gonna be awesome. So you don't have to be Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, somebody to feel good about yourself. You'll start having a good time long before that. You really will.
Yeah, and that's epic advice. So, folks, we're going to take a short break. We're going to take about a 30-second break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Jim all about this topic of creating the future with the power of your mind. So stick around and we'll be right back. Are you a coach, an author, or a speaker who wants your very own web TV show just like Expert Showcase, only with all your branding around it? Then what you want to do is head on over to VideoContent.Agency, go up to the Work With Us tab, send us your information. Let's start a conversation. Let's see if we can develop a program around you and your message. And until we see you there, make it an epic day. Welcome back. Today on Expert Showcase, we have Jim Kellner, and we're going to be talking in this segment, in the Expert Focus segment, about creating the future with the power of your mind. And for those of you who watched the beginning, who watched the hero's journey, you'll know that Jim's gone through a lot of struggle and strife in his life, and he's definitely the person to help you create the future with the power of your mind. And for those of you keeping track, the cough counter is at 3. If you don't know what we're talking about, you got to go back to the beginning and watch the beginning of the show and figure it out. It'll be worth your while. So anyway, Jim, let's dive right in. Before we go into the 3 bullet points and each of the individual keys to success we're going to talk about today, I want to give our audience a quick overview about this topic and the subject of creating the future with the power of your mind.
Yeah, it's people maybe have trouble understanding this idea that you can really create your future with your mind. But if you think about it, how did any building get built? How did a bridge get built? Somebody had to see it in their mind first. You don't just a bridge doesn't just happen. A building doesn't just happen. And so when you start to create the life that you want in your mind, and maybe you put it out on paper, or maybe you don't, whatever you want to do, I think that's really the key to getting where you want to be.
Epic. And then today we're going to talk about specifically, we're going to start imagining, we're going to reframe our occurrences, and then just make the call. So let's dive into each one of those individually, and let's start off with start imagining. What are we talking about here?
Well, I think one of the great things too is I think that people talk about goal boards a lot, and I think those are a great idea. I know I made myself one, and just seeing visual images um, is fantastic for your mind, conscious and as well as your unconscious mind. And so, I mean, I put up a goal board, and within the year it was crazy because so many things had happened that were on that goal board that I hadn't even consciously focused on. And so that's one part of it. But the other part is now I use hypnosis. So when I'm doing hypnosis for myself or for someone else, I have them imagine that future that they want, that life. And one of the things I love this, one of my clients recently said, he said, I could see the apartment building in my mind, and it gets you fired up, it gets you excited about it, and it gives you some direction, I think. And because the unconscious mind really it operates a lot in visual imagery. Um, it's really powerful. It's a very powerful tool for getting you to where you want to be. Now you can also do this just by sitting and visualizing something. But again, now we don't get in this place where all we're doing is visualizing. And I think one of the problems with The Secret is that people missed in the movie The Secret and things like that is that action part. You can't just sit and visualize all day. You actually do have to take some action, but the visualization is really a key component, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And so a couple of interesting things there. One, and I'm sure you talk about this in your talks and other things you do. Part of what you're doing is you're activating your RAS, or your reticular activation system. So you're actually there. Your brain is looking for and expecting these things. It's kind of like, when you go to buy a new car and you buy this brand new red whatever. And I've learned from a previous video that if I mention a product in here, it'll get spanked. I'll get spanked by YouTube, which was really bizarre. Complete another topic. I mean, it was. We'll talk about that offline, but that's besides the point. So you go out and buy a red car, and you swear before you bought that red car, nobody in the world had that color red in that same car, and then you drive off the lot, and then everybody all of a sudden has that color car and that same color and that same car. So it works to really clue your mind in on what to look for. The other thing, I've done vision boards. I've done vision boards for a long time, and one of the things I did was when I moved into one of my houses, was I basically created a vision board for everything that we were going to get for the house over time. And the interesting thing that did was when extra money came up or when something happened, it also gave me something to look to, and instead of going ahead and spending it, maybe on an impulse buy, it was okay. Let's look at the vision board. What did we say we want? Is this stuff we still want? And if it is, okay, here you go. Now we're going to go ahead and obtain it. And it works the same way with success. It helps to keep you on track, right?
Mhm. Absolutely.
And then
And it
that's
reminds you.
go ahead.
And it reminds you. It reminds you of what's important, which you just talked about. And that it works the same way with your mind. If you're just kind of visualizing it all the time or seeing it in hypnosis, it reminds you of what's important. And so you're not distracted by, oh, I really want to watch TV, but you go, oh yeah, but what's more important?
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because I think that's the other key is as you were just saying, it reminds you of what's important, and it keeps you on track and allows you to progress forward, and it gives you, as I call it, a touchstone to compare your activities against, to make sure any activities you're taking are important and are going to push you forward, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. And I also love what you said about the fact that, with imaging only goes so far. It's kind of like the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So you can imagine your success all day long, but if you don't take action on it, then it's not going to happen, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So when you work with somebody who might come to, because we're talking about imaging, you mentioned the movie The Secret. One of my mentors, Paul Martinelli, was in the movie, and one of the things a lot of people talk about nowadays is the law of attraction. So when people come to you and say, "Look, I've been trying this imaging stuff, and I'm a student of the law of attraction, and nothing has happened," what do you how do you deal with that, and what do you ask them? What's the first thing you ask them to do?
I asked them, what action have you taken? Because I talk to people, sometimes, I know people out there that have watched The Secret 50 times and they brag about it. I watched The Secret every week for 6 months or something. Or I read the book and I read spend that time doing something, people. That the movie is to help you become aware of that law of the universe. It's not meant to teach you anything really more than that. I don't think. To me, it's really to get that thought across to you that you are in control and that whatever you focus on in life expands. And it's that action part. I think somebody needs to do the secret part too.
Yeah, I think John Ashcraft was had just done something else. I think it was him that just came out with another kind of like kind of like what was, it's like, okay, I believe, I helped with the original Secret, and here's what's kind of wrong, and here's what we have to do different now. And I think that talks more about action, if I'm not mistaken. I could be completely wrong. I'm completely misreading these 7,000 promotional emails he sent out over that. I'm not busting on John. It's okay, John. I'm not, you're good, you're good at marketing. You're taking action. Well, that's the whole thing. He
Right,
wants
take
more,
action. Right.
he wants more people to join the neuro gym and everything else. So he's taking action. The other thing, here's a question for you. When you find people struggle to imagine things and struggle to hold that image, do you find that it's more often that they're imagining the wrong thing, meaning that they're imagining something that isn't right for their life? Or do you find it's something that they're just people who don't have this imaginative capability, and they just can't implement the imagining phase of this?
That's a great point. People imagine in different ways, and for some people, they'll be very visual, and so they can get a really good visual image. They can tell you all the details and everything. For some people, it's a little more cloudy. Mine is sort of cloudy. It's not real. It's not real vivid usually. And some people they're going to imagine sounds or feelings, and so whatever is helpful for them, and that's just based on how their learning style and that kind of thing. And so whatever works best for them. Although I do think the thing with imagination is the more you practice it, the better you'll get at it, just like everything else. But just practice. If you have trouble seeing that, when we talk about that, like maybe losing weight, that 50 pounds, what that's going to look like, what would it feel like? What would it feel like to be able to? And you can go through all the, what would it feel like to wake up in the morning, to walk across the room, to be able to go for a walk with your friends, those kind of things. And the other part is, if you still can't imagine, pretend. It'll work the same. That's the other part. Just pretend.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's kind of like the same thing when people have dreams that feel that they're really real. Your brain
Exactly.
your brain in a lot of cases doesn't understand the difference between a dream and reality. It doesn't understand the difference between, the truth, the imagined truth, and just pretending. So, and it's interesting you bring up about the fact of how would it feel, and what would it look like, because that really takes us into our next topic of reframing occurrences. Because I would think that if you would ask somebody how it would feel or what it would look like, they would make that determination based on their previous experience, not on the future, not on a valid picture of the future. Am I on base or off base there?
Absolutely. And I just want to say too, thank you so much for mentioning that about dreams, because if you don't believe that your imagination is powerful, have a scary dream and you wake up and looking around your room for something scary, right? That's only your imagination. There was nothing else going on. So your imagination is hugely powerful. Thanks for bringing that up, Chris.
You're welcome.
Right. And I got to tell you, my biggest thing in life right now, my thing that I really want to get across to people, well, is the 5 minutes. But the other big thing is really you are creating what's around you by your thought, by what you're focusing on. And I think that's where the direction we're going for this next part.
Okay.
And it is colored by your emotions, by your experiences, by the way you kind of view the world, and you can change that. And that's and like Chris said, it's called reframing. And I'll tell you, having just gone through some major challenges and setbacks in my own life, I realize that sometimes the only silver lining is that things can't possibly get worse, and that's your reframe. And then you find out, no, they can get worse. but still, if that's all you can tell yourself, then go with that and say, well, probably things can't get any worse, so woohoo!
Yeah, until and I hate to say it that way, but until they do. I know I went through my own, as I call it, year from hell. I've talked about it on stage, and it was in the span of 10 months. My wife divorced me. I had a financial meltdown, lost everything, lost my birth mom to cancer, and lost my last adopted grandparent to an unforeseen stroke. So that was all in the span of 10 months. And every day you wake up and go, okay, this is now the worst it can get. Something else can come along. But I really like when you talk about reframing occurrences, because there's a video I just watched on testtube.com that talks about transference, and it's a topic I had heard about before, I'd studied before, but it's kind of ironic that based on our conversation today, I would have watched it just a day or two ago. And the idea of transference is the fact that you assume the way somebody is going to treat you based on what you saw as a child. So you're not really taking the current situation at face value and not really understanding how true the current situation, the current reactions, and everything is based on today's frame of reference. You're doing it based on something you might have seen as a child. In your studies, and when we're talking reframing occurrences, do you ever talk about that topic of transference, or is it something does something go even further or different than that?
I haven't I haven't really covered that before. No, no, I'm familiar with the term and what it means, but I've not. But I will tell you that I've experienced that myself. I still have a little bit of problem with this, but I recognize it, so I tried to change it. I have this maybe over reverence for authority figures, and so that kind of got me in trouble. I remember there was this comedy club in Seattle, close to Seattle, and I never actually wanted to talk to the club owners because I felt like I got to stay my distance. They're above me, and I don't want to do that. And actually, it cost me stage time. It really did, because this one club owner finally didn't like him, and so then I thought he didn't like me, and then we with this vicious circle of neither one of us, because I won't talk to him because I have this reverence for him. And this other one, I remember he actually this club owner said to me, because I would just walk in and just go over and sit and wait for my time to go on. And he goes, "Man, you never say anything. You're just here for the money." And I'm like, well, and really, I mean, you kind of are there just for the money because it's your job, but relationships are important, and if you're kind of too afraid, I guess, to talk to them because you think they don't want to be bothered, when really they expect to be bothered, I guess.
Yeah, well, or they like to interact. I know it's the same way. it's challenging because it's the same way, I mean, I'm sure you experience this when you're on stage. I know I do as well. You get the people, you get some people who come up and are, I'll say, disrespectful and just want to consume every second of your time. And that's okay because you want to help people. Then you have the people who are respectful and come up and interact and everything, but realize that there are 100 people waiting in line and everybody wants to talk. But then you've got the people who, like you were just talking about, who won't come up to you and talk because they don't, they treat you as something different. And the worst part is those are the people who you really want to come up and talk, because those are the ones that really respect your time, and you want to get to know, you want to get to know everybody. And it's kind of, it's a shame when somebody, I've seen it happen a lot, where somebody will be sitting in the back of the room and they want to go talk to the speakers at an event, but they won't, because they treat them as they're somebody different. So for all those out there, you want to come up and talk to the speakers. Don't monopolize their time, but you want to come up and talk to them, because we're people
Look,
too.
I don't know. I mean, I love it. I mean, I want people to come up and say hi afterwards, right? I mean, don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
there may be a couple of weirdos out there. I mean, I know there's this. No, I know there's this. I went to a stage hypnosis show, and the stage hypnotist didn't stick around. Oh, he left, and it was over. But I mean, that's just me maybe transferring. Maybe he had something else he had to do, right? I mean, maybe he's got maybe he had diarrhea. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
so I'm projecting onto him when I shouldn't do that. But really, I think most of us, we love attention, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're up there. We want people to come up and say hi. We also want to know if it moved them at all, right?
Yeah.
If you just kind of walk out, we're like, gosh, did they like it? Did they get anything out of it?
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking, I think everything we're talking about here is all about reframing occurrences. Just to make sure that I didn't take us off track and it wasn't a point you really wanted to make during this segment. Was there any point or anything you want our audience to know when it comes to reframing occurrences?
Well, the thing that I want you to understand is that. Okay, so here's the thing. So the whole world may be against you, but believing that the whole world is against you won't get you anywhere. And so I think it's just better. And I'll give you an example. I actually had I had a friend of mine. He emailed me and he said that he had just offered a homeless man who was standing outside of a Chipotle. He asked him if he could buy him a burrito for lunch, and the homeless guy said, "I'm too busy for that." And so, well, anyway, I don't make judgments, but I found it kind of amusing. And so I just put this on Facebook. I said, this, I told the story, no judgment. I didn't say, what I just, and I had a bunch of comments on it, and some, and this one girl ended up in the very end. She sent me a couple of very long emails and really complaining about my judgment and all this, and how I was a privileged white guy and everything, and clearly she didn't see my car that I was driving, but the thing is when I tried to explain to her, and I know her story. She was a homeless. She was homeless as a child prostitute, all kinds of horrible things that happened to her. But she's like in her 30s now, maybe 40s, and as long as you keep that kind of that mindset that the whole world's out to get you, you just can't go forward. You can't move forward because that's all you're going to see. That's all you're going to and it's amazing the power of the mind. I'll tell you, I see this all the time with stage hypnosis shows, power of the mind. But I was even the things that I was standing right next to my one of my really good friends. I was going to officiate their wedding. I was standing right next to him. He looks right through me. He was the groom. Looks right through me. 5 minutes before we go on, he goes, "Has anybody seen the Reverend, the minister, Jim? Have you seen?" I'm standing right there. He looked right at me. That's how powerful it is. If you get in your mind that there is no opportunity out there, I was talking to a woman recently. She said, "Well, nobody in Phoenix is hiring." If you go on Craigslist, there are thousands of jobs on Craigslist.
Yeah.
So you're only going to see what you allow yourself to see.
Yeah.
I hope that explained it. I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, that, to kind of wrap this up, I think there were two big golden nuggets in here. One, when we're talking about reframing occurrences, what we're really talking about is things that have happened to you in the past They might be terrible. They might be the worst thing in the world. You might have been homeless like me. You might have been bullied like me. You might have been overweight, like Jim. There might have been some terrible things that have happened to you. You have to go back and reframe them in a different way and not let them control the rest of your life. That's one thing. The second thing is things that happen to you today and going forward. You have to take a look at them, and you might have to change your frame of reference where you're coming from to understand what they mean and understand, and maybe treat them or treat the people that you're interacting with, a little bit differently in an effort to push your life forward. And the third thing, right there at the end, I heard was how powerful the mind is. That if you think things don't exist, you can, in some ways, make them not exist. So if you think that there are no opportunities, then you're going to not see any opportunities that are out there. Not that by thinking there are, you're going to see a million of them, but at least it opens you up to the possibility of seeing the opportunities and expecting an opportunity to come your way. And that really gets us into, when you go from expecting an opportunity to come your way into making things happen, it gets into the third point of making the call. Now, making the call, I mean, I'm picturing picking up a cell phone and making a call. Is that what we're talking about here, Jim, or are we talking about something else?
It is, but it's also a metaphor for everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the reason that I said making the call is because I keep having this situation happen where where people will want to connect with someone that you know. Maybe they want to present something to the office manager, for instance, where you work at or something, and they say, "Here's my number. Have them give me a call." Well, here's the thing. Number one, you're asking me to do something, and then you're asking somebody else to do something, right? To do something for you. You're the one that wants it, and so to me, you're kind of asking a lot. Number one, like, okay, that's the more things you ask, the more things you expect from other people, the less I think you're going to get. Here's the other thing too: is you're putting all the power into other people's hands. So if you're waiting on this office manager to call you, you're going to be waiting around. Why not just call that office manager yourself? Why not find out what their name is and you call it? And so, I got totally off base track there. I think I confused you there for a moment.
No, that's okay.
Or people will say, I really want to, help. I noticed your friend is having this issue here. Have them give me a call. No, don't have them give you a call. You call them. If I know Chris knows John Maxwell, for instance, and I go, hey, Chris, have John give me a call, will you?
Yeah, sure, that's going to happen.
So number one, I got to get Chris to talk to John, and then John to actually call me. So we got a couple of steps of where a no could happen. But if, he might be more inclined to go, hey, Chris, can I get John's email address? He might give me that, right? So, but then I contact him. So but it's the same thing with everything else. Don't just sit around waiting for the job to come to you. You got to go get the job. Go after it. Be a hunter. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, and I think part of it boils down to, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think part of it boils down to sometimes they're afraid of rejection, so they're afraid of making the call. But in another, or I should say, however, in another aspect, they're afraid they're going to bother somebody, or they're afraid they're going to be a nuisance, or they're afraid to ask for things. And do you find, I guess let me ask you that question, do you find that the clients you work with, do either of those two themes, the afraid of rejection, or being afraid of rejection, or the fear of being a nuisance, do either of those two play into why people don't make the call?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I suffer from the same thing. I sometimes don't want to call people because I'm afraid of rejection, or I don't want to be a nuisance also. But the thing is it more of a nuisance to actually make the call to somebody, or to ask them to call you, right?
Yeah.
For something that they don't necessarily even want, or don't know that they want.
Yeah. Well, and the funny part is with it's more of a nuisance. it alleviates that fear of rejection, because if you're talking with somebody like, you mentioned the John Maxwell comment, it's like if you ask me to have John call you, then if John says no, you're not getting rejected by John, I'm getting rejected by John,
Right. True.
and then I'm coming back and I'm not rejecting you, and you don't feel rejected because you're not getting that immediate no. It's kind of this roundabout, this roundabout way of going about things, and for whatever reason it feels softer to people. I mean, does that all make sense?
Actually, I love that too. That I hadn't even thought about that aspect. But yeah, you're not getting rejected. You're just getting a reporting of the facts then, right? And John said no, he's not going to call you.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times what will happen is in this triangle we're talking about, and this is what our brain, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is, I think, what our brain expects. You ask me to have John call you. John says no. I'm not going to be nasty. I'm going to say, John probably won't be nasty. He'll say, well, if I can, I will. Then it's something where my translation back to you is, he'll try and he'll do his best, so you don't feel that immediate rejection. And by the time he doesn't call, then you don't, then you're not really feeling that rejection, because you've kind of forgotten about it, or it's been put in the back of your mind, and it's been softened. Does that make sense, or am I off base on that?
Oh, it does, absolutely. And the thing is we all, not well, I shouldn't say we all, but a lot of us, we get that fear of failure. Really, is what it comes down to. We feel like we failed, and like I was just trying to explain to a comic the other day, because he was talking about he's going to do his first open mic and he's afraid he's going to bomb, and I said, and he was looking for advice. I said, you probably will bomb. I mean, that's just I said, embrace it. That's the first 10 times you'll probably bomb. It's very few people that really are really, really funny their first few times on stage. It happens every once in a while, but it's a learning process. And the thing is, you didn't learn to walk just by walking. You had to fall down a bunch of times. You don't remember that, but you did. And we want to be good at everything without having to fail. But I think that's how you get good at things. And believe me, I still struggle with this too. You get good at things by failing them.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's kind of funny you bring that up, but I remember the first event I put on, ended up having, I think, 3 ticket sales, lost my shirt, and it was a complete disaster. And everybody said, well, wouldn't you have rather had it be a success? And I went, no, I learned 100 things, that I've been able to implement since then to make every event more successful than that one. Financially, sure, I would have loved it to have been successful. However, it taught me so much about things not to do, about things to worry about, not to worry about. And in the end, I didn't die. In the end, nothing from that one event was so tragic that it affected the rest of my life. And I moved on. And I think that's the biggest thing, and then I'm going to ask you what you want to leave the folks with. But from my perspective, thinking about this topic and talking about this topic, one of the things is you have to realize that your brain is wired to be in this life and death struggle all the time. And a lot of things that we look at, your brain translates into life and death. And you have to understand that if it's not life and death, then it's not life and death. And it's not
Exactly.
it's not going to kill you. It might hurt you. It might, take a toll on you mentally. It might take a toll on you physically, and it might do something negative to you, but that's okay. You can come and you can achieve more because of it. Is that all? I mean, does that make sense, or did I go completely off base on that,
And
Jim?
no, not at all. And I got to tell you, if you read anything about famous people, all these quotes from famous people that talk about failing, about persevering, about all this. They wouldn't write about it if it didn't happen. Most great people have failed dozens of times. And the only difference is they just kept getting up. And the thing I think that can really help a person to reframe, if you're wondering, well, how do I reframe the situation? Use this phrase. Something happens and you go, isn't it great that my car broke down, right? Because then I had the opportunity to take the bus, and I got to see things I hadn't seen before, or whatever. And it may seem silly, and it's tough at first, believe me. And it doesn't. It's grandma dies. It's going to be tough to reframe that in a positive way. But once you get in the habit of it, it becomes much easier. And the thing is you just don't get anywhere by dwelling on your failures. It won't help at all. Learn from them, yes, but it won't help to. You might as well reframe it and look at it in a positive way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is an epic place to end today's episode on. Jim, you've been an epic guest. Before we roll on out of here, I'm going to tell people how to get in contact with you. I just threw Jim's website up on the screen, and considering it's nice and long, I'm not going to read it because you're watching this. Actually, what the heck? In case you're listening to this, in case you downloaded this and are audio podcasting or something, it's Jim Kellner Hypnotist. That's JimKellnerHypnotist.com. Jim Kellner Hypnotist.com, or text the word hypnosis to 33733, and you'll get signed up to Jim's newsletter and get a free hypnosis download called Unlimited Happiness. Jim, epic stuff you're doing, not only in the world of hypnosis, but in comedy and everything else you're doing. You're an epic guy. Before I kind of roll on out of here and say goodbye to our viewers for today, is there anything you want to leave our viewers with before we roll on out of here?
Thank everybody for watching, and I just want you to know you really are. I know it's hard to believe, but I think you really are mostly in control of where you are in your life. So if you're not happy where you are in your life, take responsibility for it and start taking some steps to change it.
Epic advice from an epic guy. You got to get in touch with this guy. You got to take him up on his free offer. You got to reach out to him and see what he can do to help you. And folks, once again, until we meet again, make it an epic day.